everyone, I'm Allie with the Potomac Bead Company, and I am going to do a nice spring design for you today using some different beads manufactured out of the Czech Republic to really highlight some shapes. And we're going to be making this tulip bracelet. I'm calling it the Tranquil Tulip Bracelet. You can see here a number of different design elements just to show you guys kind of how it progresses from thought to actual being. So I have the tulips here that we'll be making. You can make this into a necklace or a bracelet. I'll be doing a bracelet here for you in the video. If you need any of the materials for this Tranquil Tulip Bracelet, there's going to be a little drop down here on the left hand side with links to the different materials you can purchase from me online, or you can get from one of our Potomac Bead Company stores also if you happen to be near one. You can visit PotomacBeads.com to see a list of those locations as well as to shop online. For the tulips here, we're going to be using some Czech glass beads. The Czech glass beads that we're using, really highlighting here, are the Crescent beads, which the Crescent beads are on the sides here. I have two Crescent beads back to back. I'm going to be using the Pacifica Avocado color for the sides of the tulip. And then for the first inner portion of the tulip, I'm going to be using the Opaque Lilac Luster. On the very inside, I'm also using another Czech shape here, and this is the 2-hole bar, again in that opaque lilac color. You could do this in different colors so it would look like different colors of tulips. The nice thing is tulips come in a range of colors and designs, so you really could kind of play up. If you happen to do the bracelet with me, or the necklace, I'm sorry, for the Slice of Heaven, you probably have a bunch of extra of your crescent beads sitting around. You could do all different color tulips in this design as well. To pull together all of these shapes, we do need some complementing beads. The seed beads that we're using on the sides, I'm using 11/0s and 15s. I decided to let the colors really pop, so I'm just sticking with metallic colors. In the 11/0, I'm using the Crystal Labrador color, which is a nice bright silver. And then in the 15/0 seed bead, we're using the Galvanized dark yellow of the 15/0. I also have at the top here of my tulip a little teardrop. And the teardrop that I've chosen to use is that champagne luster teardrop. So it's just a nice kind of milky color in the middle of my flower. On the sides, to link my flowers together, I am adding a little bit of bling with my Potomac Crystal Rondelles, and these are our crystal rondelles here in our 3x4mm. Those are going to be used on the sides to link our flowers together. To finish the bracelet and to do the clasp, I'm going to be using a cup button. Our Aztec gold cup buttons have been in popular demand, and I really like that color with the flowers. I went back and forth between purple and gold. I'm deciding to go with the Aztec gold in that flower color there. The whole bracelet will be held together by .006 green wildfire beading thread. And this is a 2-needle project. So I have 2 of my size 10 English style beading needles here. Whether or not you want to use tulips or the pony English style, that's up to you, but a size 10 will work nicely for this project. I am working on a bead on it board. You can also work on a bead mat, something to keep your beads from rolling. Handy tools that I have near me are some super glue glue for tying our knots. And then I also have my thread burner or cord cutter in order to burn the end of my thread, as well as to fuse the thread together at the end and make it nice and flush to the project. Because this is a 2-needle project, we're going to start by putting our cup button on first. I want you to lay out little piles of each bead at the top of your bead mat and get about 5 feet of beading thread onto your needle. There's going to be a needle on each end of the thread as we get ready to work and to start the design. To get started, we have our materials all laid out, and like I said, we're actually going to start with our cup button here. The cup button is going to be used at the very end of the bracelet in order to clasp and close off the design. And I'm going to decorate the cup button with one of my 2-hole bars and some of my silver seed beads. This is going to bring some of that additional color into the end of the design. To start, I'm going to add 3 seed beads onto my right needle. Again, I have one piece of thread that's about 5 feet and a needle on either end. The 2-hole bar, I'm going to take one needle through the left hole and one needle through the right hole. And then while that's right there, I'm just going to take my cup button with the little rounded side facing down and go through the cup button and out the other side in order to decorate that cup button up a little bit. Once that cup button is pulled down, you can see that design. It'll sit a little bit higher than the cup button, but it has that nice purple and silver look that you can see that's going to mimic the rest of the bracelet. To start our bracelet, we need to get the cup button into a V and then separate it out to start our first tulip. To do that, I'm going to pick up 3 of my silver 11-0 seed beads, 3 on each needle. Once I have that, I'm going to let those both drop down next to my cup button, and I'm going to pick up a crystal. The crystal that I pick up, I'm going to put on the right needle, and then I'm going to take the left needle through that same crystal going in the same direction. What that's going to do is bring the threads together and create a little V right after the cup button in order for the cup button then to have a place for the loop to sit on top. After that, to get ready to separate my threads and get my first flower going, I'm going to put 3 more 11-0 seed beads on each needle. After this, we're going to start the tulip by adding our crescent beads. The crescent beads, when we add them, I'm going to separate the needles and I'm going to add to my left needle. Because the crescents are a shape that they have that kind of curvature, when I add the crescents, I want to think about which direction the crescents are sitting. For this first one, it's really not going to matter because I can flip the bracelet over, but I am going to go in with the crescent facing down and the edge facing up and add 4 crescents. The 4 crescents that I'm going to be adding are my avocado color, then 2 lilac, and then another avocado. This is going to create the little sides of the tulip and the first inner flowers. You want to make sure all of those crescents are sitting the same direction, and I'm going to pull that needle in and create those beads, or force those beads to sit right down at the bottom. So you can see here how the crescents are facing downward. I'm going to take the needle that was on the right hand side now and switch that over to the left by going through those 4 crescents in the opposite direction. So the crescents have 2 holes. Right now we're just using the first one. Once I pull that, you can see the crescents kind of want to hang out right there together and overlap one another. The needle that's on the right hand side, I'm going to take on along the side of my avocado crescent. To decorate the side, I'm going to use a 15 in my gold, a silver, and then a gold. So it's 15, 11, 15. The needle that's on the right hand side coming out of the bottom hole of the crescent is going to go through the top hole of the first 2 crescents, the avocado color and that lilac color, and come out right in the middle. When you work with 2 needles, generally whatever you do with one, you're going to do the same thing with the other. So since I did that on the right hand side, I'm also going to do that on the left hand side. On goes a 15, 11, 15, and I'm going from the bottom hole of the crescent on the left side to the top hole and also through the lilac color. So both needles now are coming out the center of those 2 lilac crescents. When they come out the center of the 2 lilac crescents, I get to add my 2-hole bars. Pick up one of the needles, either right or left, doesn't matter. I have the right one in my hand. I'm going to move the left needle over to the left. And once I have my threads cooperating and laying correctly, I'm going to pick up with this right hand needle my 2 bars. And I'm picking them up through that first hole, letting them drop in towards my project here. And then I'm going to pick up the needle on the other side and also go through those 2 holed bars going in the opposite direction. What that's going to do is crisscross the thread in that bottom hole of that bar, and the thread is going to come out one thread on the right side between the purple crescent and the purple bar, and the other one between the left hand side purple crescent and bar. Pull tightly to make sure that those crescents stay nice and tight at the bottom there to get that floral effect. And then the needle that's on the right hand side, I'm going to take up through the top hole of that same bar. There'll be a little bit of green thread exposed on the outside of the bar, but it's really not going to matter because 1, the flower has green to it, and 2, you're really not going to see it. On the other side, same thing, with the 2-hole bar going from the first hole to the second hole of the same bar, the needle is coming out between the bars. So just like we did with the crescents, the needle is coming out between the 2 bars in the middle. When it's in the middle here, this is when we get to put the middle of our tulip, that little stamen there, in with our drop. The needle that's on the right hand side here, I'll pick up. I'm going to add a 15, a drop, and a 15. So from the right bar to the left bar, going through that top hole. The needle now that's on the left, I'm going to move to the right. So I'm going to go back through all 3 of those beads that I just added, going back through the 15, the drop and the 15, and then also through the bar on the other side and come out right after the bar. So the thread at this first portion of the tulip gets crisscrossed through the tulip at the bottom, gets crisscrossed through the tulip there at the bar, and then it gets crisscrossed through the little stamen drop. And that's how the tulip gets created. To make each tulip now, we have to get to a new section. To get to the new section, here's where the crystals come in play. I'm going to be using my gold 15-0s, and I'm going to add 3 gold 15-0 beads onto my right needle. Then I'm going to put on a crystal, and then 3 gold beads. Since I've done this on the right, I'm going to let that fall down, hook my needle into my bead bag, pick up the left needle, and repeat the process. Once I have the crystals, which will work as a divider, I go back in to start my tulip over. To start the tulip over, we're again going to be grabbing 4 crescents, 2 in our green and 2 in our purple. When we grab the crescents with the left hand needle, we want to make sure again, because the flower is currently facing downward, that we're adding them facing down through that first hole. We add the avocado, lilac, another lilac, and another avocado. I've added those on that left hand needle. I'm going to bring them down a little bit closer to my project. While I'm holding on to them, my right needle is going to go through all 4 bottom holes and come out the opposite side. And give a nice tight pull, and that'll get my second flower ready to get started. Once I have those 4 lined up, the needle that's on the right hand side is going to grab a 15, an 11, and a 15. So from the bottom hole of that avocado crescent into the top hole towards the center, going through both the avocado and the lilac. Sit that needle down. On the left hand side now, same thing. 15, 11, 15, sewing through the top hole of those crescents. Once you have it, give a nice tight pull. That will pull those crescents into a V at the bottom, as well as tighten up the threads that are along the side. When you're at the middle, time to add our bars. Picking up the left-hand needle, I'm going to add 2 bars and let them drop down. Just like I did with the crescents, I'm going to pick up the other needle and sew through those same 2 holes of those bars, going in the opposite direction. Now my thread is coming out between the crescent and the bars. I'm going to sew from the bottom hole of the bar to the top hole of the bar on both the right side and the left side. Anytime you're stepping up from one hole to a second hole in a bead, this is always a good opportunity to give a nice tight pull on your thread to get rid of any extra thread that's showing, because it tightens up the whole project. When we get to the middle again of this next tulip, on goes a 15, a drop, a 15, sewing over to the next bar towards the outside. I'm going to pick up the needle now that's on the left, go back through those 3 beads that I just added, as well as that bar. Once I'm to the outer edge, I give a nice pull, and then I'm going to get ready to add my 3 seed beads, crystal, 3 seed beads. Do that on the right, repeat on the left, and that is the start then of the process. So I'm going to go back through adding in a bunch of tulips here to this Tranquil Tulip Bracelet and get it longer and longer by adding my crescents and my bars in place. Now that I have 9 of my tulip flowers done, I will get ready to do the loop to attach to my clasp. You can think about when you're making the bracelet, if you do have a 6 3/4 inch wrist or 7 inch wrist that you want to do, 9 tulips is going to be about the length for this bracelet. That being said, you're going to need about 18 pieces of each of your styles of beads, because you need 2 for each. If you do want to do a little bit longer, think about 10 tulips as your total count, so that way you'll know that you need 20 pieces of each style of bead that you're using, and then just 1 drop for each center of your tulip. To do the end of the bracelet, I'm going to do it very much like the start of the bracelet, where I bring the beads in together into a crystal. When you're coming out the end of your last tulip bead, you're going to do the same thing that you've been doing in order to get that look with the beads coming out of the side here. I'm going to use my 3 11-0 seed beads on the one side, and then my crystal. I'm going to use 3 more of the 15s. Sorry, I said 11s at first, but it's at 15s to get that gold look. Same thing on the other side. I have those 3 15s, my crystal, and then my 3 15s. That's going to bring us to the top then of our last petal. When we got to the top of the last petal, I want to bring them back into 1 crystal. To do that, I'm just going to take a crystal here, go through the crystal with my first needle going through, and then my second needle going through in the same direction. When you have that done, then you'll see that little crystal top edging. That's finished. On the side now, I want to do a loop in order for my clasp to go through. To do my loop, I'm going to alternate which beads I use. If I use my silver and gold, so I'm going to do every other bead. Actually, I'll do 2 gold and 1 silver. And I'm going to make this big enough just with one needle going through right now to go around my cup button. If you're using a different clasp or a metal clasp, you'll want to put on a wire protector right now in order to guard your thread. And I'm going to put on this collection here of my gold and my silver. I really like the look of the mixed tone. Push those all down next to my clasp. I'll continue adding a couple more. Once I have the loop completed, I'm going to finish it whatever way I start. So if you are doing all the 11s or all the 15s, you want to make sure that whatever you started with, you also end with. It's usually nicest if you are doing something to end with the 15s. That'll get the beads closer into that V section there. I want to make sure then that this is big enough to go through my loop, since I did use a combination of beads. I'm going to take my needle that has the beads on it. I'm going to run it down through that crystal and down through the seed beads and the crystals, coming right out before my last of my little tulips there. I'm going to make sure that my loop is big enough. It also needs to account for those beads that I put on the top of the cup button. Since it is big enough now, I'll take the other needle that's coming out the top of the crystal and I'll reinforce that whole loop, going through all these beads one more time. Back at the beginning, I didn't think to, but if you want to, you can actually reinforce that button with more than one thread going through by repeating that first V over. On this side here, once you get the beads through a second time to complete that loop, my needle and my thread are coming out through that crystal, and the other one is down next to the last tulip. I'm going to take my needle and thread down the other side of the crystal. And my goal now is to make those two threads come together and meet. Because I see some extra thread here, I'm going to push all my beads next to the tulip, push that crystal down, and pull my threads one at a time to get rid of any excess or thread slack. I'm then going to take my needle through the top of that last of my tulips, going through the 15 and the teardrop, the 15, and then out the other side of my last bar. When I get my needle and thread out the side of the bar, my needle and thread are out of position where they're actually meeting the two ends together. I'm going to take my needles off, and I'm simply going to tie those two thread ends together. If you do like to reinforce your bracelet, or you don't like to glue any of your thread, you could keep the needles on. After you tied knots, you can work them back into the thread a little bit, or into the project a little bit further. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of glue on my knot here of my Tranquil Tulip Bracelet. I really love the look of this bracelet. It's nice and springy. The sun is shining, tulips are popping up. So it's a great time of the year to make this bracelet. Once I have my square knots there, I'm going to take a little bit of my super new glue, take a small dab of that and dab it onto my knot. If you need to, you can use your needle to kind of push it into the correct position. If you have extra on, you can also just dab it onto your bead mat. I usually like to kind of blow against that and force that glue next to the knot. Once that glue dries a little bit, I'm going to take my thread burner, burn those thread ends down close to my bracelet, and then as my final task, I'm going to burn them down flush next to the project, making sure that you're not screwing through the project itself. Once you have that, your bracelet is actually done. It does sit a little bit on a curvature, which I love. I'm really having fun playing with these crescent beads and getting that shape. So this turned out to be about a 7-inch wrist, or a 7-inch bracelet with those 9 tulips, creating those little V's at the start and the finish of the bracelet. It gives a really nice pattern design. Like I said, with the different flowers, you really could kind of play around with the colors of your tulips and have fun creating new tulips, working with different patterns together. You can even change up what you use to connect them as well. This would look really nice as a necklace also, with the tulips falling down towards the middle. You could then go back up from the top here, perhaps add in one of the recent floral designs that we've had here at the beginning. In some of the other videos, you could add that in the front as well. So have fun taking this little bracelet design and this little tulip idea, making it your own and creating. If you do need any of the materials again, or any of the supplies needed to make this bracelet, you can go back to the beginning of this video. You can also check us out online at PotomacBeads.com. If you want to stay interactive with us and interact with us regularly, you can also ask to join our Facebook group, which is Beading and Jewelry Making. Also subscribe to this YouTube channel and you'll get regular updates on new products that we have, different videos that we're doing and designs, as well as some creative updates and some creative ideas from others as well. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and happy spring and making this beautiful tulip bracelet.